welcome to an Everyday Canines video. This is part of the Running Contact series, but we're taking a little step away from the dog walk and we are looking at the seesaw. So if you like, this is diverting into the seesaw for a bit. Why are we doing this? I mentioned before when I was doing my dog walk videos that it used to be a case that you trained your dog walk, then you'd train your seesaw. The idea being that your dog would get confident on the dog walk before they went onto an obstacle that moves. Now, the problem with that is very often the dog would be confident on the dog walk. They'd then come and do the seesaw, and because it isn't the dog walk, but they thought it was, because they'd had all this background of going up a plank that was solid, but suddenly this was different, then you'd end up with a dog that didn't want to do the dog walk or jumped off the end. So you messed up all the work you'd done on the dog walk because you'd done that first and come to this. So these days, namely with Magpie, instead of doing the two obstacles, the dog walk first, then this one, I have consciously made the effort, hello girlie, to do them in tandem. Come here, Trouble. So that at all times, Magpie's getting the idea that there's a seesaw and there's a dog walk. So why do we have this problem? It's quite straightforward in the sense that the seesaw looks from this angle very much like a dog walk up plank. The dog's coming from here. Now, we imagine the dog is obviously not our height, they're lower. So they potentially cannot see that this is an end up here. They're coming up it, and they're so used to doing that dog walk plank straight up, go over the top, carry on, and they do it fast. They come up here, they get there, and they either go, whoa, it's moving, and that's different, or they get up there and they launch themselves. And you see this awful lot in baby dogs in competition. So they clearly have been trained on both obstacles, but you see it all the time. They come to the seesaw and they just launch themselves off it, or they freak on it, or vice versa. They do the seesaw first and then they don't want to do a dog walk. So this is why I'm trying now with Magpie to do them together. So they're learning together that this one moves, that one doesn't. There's a couple of things to bear in mind when we're talking about running contacts when we're involving the seesaw, and that is, and this is something that someone pointed out to me a long time ago, technically you cannot do a running contact on a seesaw. You can do a running contact on a dog walk and A-frame because the dog does a continuous line over the obstacle. They are constantly running, but no dog can go up the seesaw without stopping. I mean, they can, but that's when they launch themselves off the end. All dogs have to wait maybe just a fraction of a second or a few seconds for the seesaw to lower, hit the ground before they can move off. So I call the seesaw, rather than a running contact, which you can't technically do, I'd call it a self-released contact if that's where you're going to. So there's two options. You'd either have a complete stopped contact where the dog doesn't release itself off the seesaw until you ask it to, or you have a self-release where the dog goes up, waits for it to tip, and then goes off. So that's just one thing to bear in mind. It is a slightly different concept, and you cannot have a running contact as such. The three big issues with your seesaw, and the reason why dogs move from the dog walk to the seesaw and have issues, one is the noise, because whichever way you look at it, this makes a noise when it bangs. Now, this is obviously a wooden seesaw, but even aluminium, they all make noises, and depending on the environment, they make a bigger noise or lesser noise. You know, if they're on sand and they're in a building, sometimes they really echo. So the noise can be extremely off-putting for dogs. Secondly, there's obviously the movement, the tip point. It's usually this tip point, the moment when the dog feels the plank going out from under its feet. That's the moment when they start to go woo and freak. Not all dogs, but some dogs, and a lot of dogs. And thirdly, there's the impact point. What do I mean by the impact point? The impact point is where the end goes down and hits the ground. There's been lots of debate about how fair it is on the dog's joints and everything to do lots of seesaws regularly, and whether there should be padding on the seesaw, and how much of a problem the impact of the seesaw going down. So it's when it's hitting the ground. if that causes dogs to jump off the side. And there is a theory that actually that's part of the reason you get a lot of dogs jumping off the side, because they don't like the impact. They're going down, they're about to hit the ground, they're going to go thud, and they bail off or they jump off because they don't want to do that, which is actually quite understandable, because if you imagine you're on an obstacle that's about to hit the ground and it's going to be hard, and it's not the nicest experience, is it? So for those three factors, the seesaw is a scary obstacle. With other elements as well. If you've got a lighter weight dog, they can sometimes get knocked off the end. That can be scary. If they come off the end and they don't misjudge it and the seesaw comes back up, because obviously it's self-leveling, it can hit them. That can be scary. There's other elements, of course, as I've mentioned before. It does look like a dog walk plank, so that can unconsciously it can cause a problem for the dog, because without realizing it, if we send the dog up the seesaw, they think it's a dog walk, they confuse themselves the heck out of it. All those factors together, they come together. This is the biggest thing that can wreck your running dog walk. So we need to look at this in tandem with our running dog walk before our dog is even doing a full dog walk. We need to be adding this into the equation so that we can prevent, hopefully, that sudden fear period when they go, I can't do dog walks because I've done seesaws, because that can be a big issue. I had a big issue with Swift, trust me on this, and it can last a long time and it can be a real knockback for you. So before we move into the lessons, I'm going to show you of how we can work this in tandem. I just want to talk to you a little bit about my setup here. So obviously this is a wooden seesaw. This is because it's homemade for me and it's in my field. So it's outdoors all the time. Now I have access to an aluminium seesaw as well. If I didn't, I wouldn't be using a wooden seesaw, because it would be extremely unusual to go to a competition and find a wooden seesaw. I can't think of where you would. So all dogs are now on aluminium seesaws, and ideally they're going to be learning on aluminium seesaws. But as I do also have access to aluminium at club, I don't mind the fact that I've got a wooden seesaw, which is more suited here to being out in my field all the time in all weathers. And as I said, it was homemade for me. So that's why I've got wood. But if you're only going to have access to one seesaw, make sure it's an aluminium seesaw. Secondly, this is a non-adjustable seesaw. I think adjustable seesaws are great, but they're not that easy to get hold of, funnily enough, in the UK. Not the ones I want, where I can go really low anyway. So I make do with one that's completely non-adjustable. So, this is the thing. If you've got an adjustable, you can easily do this with an adjustable and work up the heights. But if not, you can still do this. Lastly, I want to mention this at the end, which was an idea from one of my friends. I cannot take credit for that, but that was a really good idea. This is an old dog walk strap. And she said to me, a good way when you're trying to work your seesaw, get the end behaviour, and you don't want it to tip too much, or you don't want it to tip at all. We used to be using like jumps and stuff under it to try and hold it, but they're not really that good. They don't hold position. She said, dog walk strap, perfect. I can put this here, and this is going nowhere. That means that when I'm training my dogs at an early stage, if I don't want them to be spooked by the tip at all, I know it's going to be secure. I know it's not going anywhere. I know it's fine. So that's my setup. And now I'm going to move you into the next videos. We're going to look at how we can work on this with our dog walk to hopefully avoid any future problems. So I hope you've enjoyed this Everyday Canines video. And if you have, you might like to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click on the bell and you'll get notifications of new videos. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And I hope to see you all again very, very soon.